Hi, it's Zoe. Hey everybody. I'm just doing a video documentary on my family and myself, and sorry I'm kind of new at this, so if this seems weird, that's probably why. But to tell you a little bit about myself, I grew up with a single mom and my sister, and I never knew who my dad was. And that was just kind of normal to me. My mom when I would ask my mom who my dad was, she would always say, "You don't have a dad." Actually, she'd say, "You don't have a dad." And I just kind of was like, oh, until I got, a little older and my friends are like, "You have a dad." And then, I asked her, and I think one time I got her to say a name, but it didn't really make sense. And she never told me anything else about him, really. The only other thing I knew about him was we were at the doctor's office one day, and the doctor had asked how old my father was when I was conceived, and she said 25. So those were really the only two things I knew about him. I knew I was born in Minneapolis. He's not listed on my birth certificate, So I knew my mom ran with a rough crowd around the time I was conceived. She got involved in some really hardcore drugs and alcohol and all kinds of other bad habits. So I guess I never really had a strong desire to meet my father. I wanted to know about him, but I didn't really search too hard. I'll just put it that way. And there's other reasons that I didn't look too hard to, but we'll get into that later. So where do I want to start? So a few years ago, I was curious about my DNA, and half of my DNA is unknown. I know I'm Polish and Swedish and Norwegian, and I know a lot about my mom's family because I was raised by my mom's family, and I forgot to mention my mom actually passed away when I was 11 years old. So my mother died. I basically lost my whole life because she was the parent that was taking care of me, and my aunt and uncle ended up adopting me. So that was a hard time. But back to my dad. A year ago, or over a year ago, I took a test with Ancestry.com. This is not sponsored, by the way. I took a test with Ancestry.com, and the results came back, and it was really cool. I really enjoyed looking at the different parts of the world that my ancestors came from. And I had done some research on other tests, but decided that this was the one I wanted to do, because it wasn't really meant to find your dad or to find all these illnesses you might be predisposed to. I just thought it was like a fun, here are the parts of the country that your parent or your grandparents or great-great-great-grandparents came from. So I thought that was really cool. So I did it, it came back, I got the results, and there was one second cousin that I communicated with, and it turns out she was related to me on my mom's side, so that was really fun. So I've been on Ancestry.com for over a year now. I got my results back about a year ago, and 3 days ago I was actually at my daughter's school conference, and I got a message in my email. So I get a message from someone, I'll call him Matt, and he said, "Hey, I'm curious as to how we're related," and it showed up as a first cousin. And I had heard on DNA tests that cousins are sometimes siblings, and I continued to read his message, and it said, "I'm searching for my dad." And I said, I responded, you know, it's nice to meet you, cousin. You know, I tried not to be like, maybe we're half siblings. But I did let him know. I said, you know, I don't know who my dad is either. So, you know, thinking like it's probably the same guy. He said his dad was in a motorcycle gang, and, you know, he was born just a little before me. So it kind of made sense. Like maybe we're half siblings. So I went on there and we kind of talked a little, and I did some more looking, and I noticed that, so on Ancestry.com you can kind of filter it so that like you can see, like, so Matt and I can actually filter it so I can see only the people that we have in common. And so I did that. So like a lot of people that I didn't recognize their names showed up. I wanted to be careful. I did mention, like, here's what I know about my dad. I think he'd probably be about 25 years old when, you know, in 1983. I shared some stuff like that. And then it was really fun. Actually, Matt was really cool. He was communicating with me a lot, and you know, I instantly felt a connection when I saw his picture, and it was just really cool. Like, we had this great thing going on, and Matt and I were exchanging emails, sorry. And he said, well, I'm just gonna throw this out there, but it looks like we're related on his mom's side and my dad's side. And I'm just gonna throw this out there, but my uncle sounds a lot like this guy you're talking about. And he told me his uncle's name, and it instantly rang a bell. And it scared the crap out of me, and it excited me, and you know, like, okay, well, at first I'm like, okay, this is probably just a fluke, like, Matt's still probably a second cousin, or there's still some other way, like, this can't be happening. You know, there's a little bit of denial going on, like, and caution, and like, who is this guy? And I didn't mention this, but Matt was actually overseas. And, you know, I don't know. It was just really weird. Like, these emotions come out like, oh, I want to get in contact with my dad, you know, like the fairy tale ending, and, you know, embracing in a hug and spending the rest of our lives together and doing all the wonderful things that dads and daughters do, you know, that's never been my imagination, but of course that kind of started to come up, and then, you know, and then like reality sets in, and you're like, okay, well, hold on. If this guy is my dad, like, how did this happen? Am I the product of a extramarital affair? Do I have half siblings that would despise me? You know, is there a wife out there that, you know, would just be crushed knowing that her husband had an affair and I'm the love child? You know, a lot of those emotions started to come out. And I wasn't really sure where I wanted to go. And I mean, I wanted to keep communicating with Matt because I feel like a connection with him, and, you know, and I want to help him on his journey. He's still looking for his dad. So, but, you know, so then you start thinking, okay, all these things. Well, it turns out that my dad, through communication with Matt, doesn't have any children that he knows of. And okay, yeah, I should be careful, because at this point I didn't really know. I was still like, this guy can't be my dad, but there was a lot of similarities. So I was like, okay, well, tell me about this guy, your uncle. Tell me about your uncle. And it sounded like, okay, he has no kids, so that's okay. He doesn't think he has any kids. He isn't married right now. I don't know if he's ever been married. You know, he has a big heart. He likes fitness. He is into music. you know, he might have a temper here or there, which I have a really bad temper, so I can relate to that. Although I control it pretty well these days. So anyway, so Matt's like, he has 3 aunts and there's 3 sisters and a brother in his mom is his mom, and then an aunt, and then this guy that might be my dad. So there's 4 siblings, kind of, you know, his aunts and then his uncle. He's like, can I tell my aunts? They would just love to meet you. You actually look like my family. Like, you look like people in my family. And that was really sweet. Especially since then he sent me some pictures of his aunts, and they're just gorgeous, you know. So like, their whole family is just beautiful, everybody. So it was neat to hear that. And like, it was nice to hear that maybe his aunts would want to have a relationship with me, and like, you know, he was kind of bummed. I think like he was probably going through a lot of stuff too. He kind of knew his uncle, and he thought he knew his uncle, and the fact that his uncle might have a child that he hid from the family for all these years, you know, I don't know. He was probably going through whatever he was going through too. But he did say, oh, my aunts and whatever. So he's like, can I please, I won't say anything, but unless I have your permission, but can I please tell someone? And I'm like, well, of course, you know, I wouldn't want to keep this a secret if I was on your side of things either. And so he reached out to his aunts and his mom. And his mom wrote back to him, because he's overseas right now working. His mom texted back to him, or wrote back to him, and said, I remember a rumor that that his uncle, maybe my dad, was living in our area with a woman around the time I was born, and she kept saying that her child was his child. I also forgot to mention that when I was younger, I found a baby picture of myself and a man. And I held it up to my mom, and I said, Mom, who is this? And she said, give me that. She took the picture, she ripped the guy out, and then she handed the picture back to me of me. So I had this baby picture with, like, you know, a baby, me, and like just hands like going to grab for me. Just, anyway. So maybe he was living with my mom when, you know, even after I was born, he knew about me. And it sounds like maybe the family, like maybe he had told someone in the family that I was around.